May 4th, 2012. OJ Mayo is no miracle whip. It's ClipperBlog Live, Roundtable Edition. Andrew Hahn here with our panelists. Breen Murphy making his debut.
Hello.
DJ Foster.
Making my not debut.
Nick Flint. And back from Memphis, Kevin Arnovitz. Kevin, let's start with you. Game 2, is it just turnovers and rebounding and the Clippers would win it that easy?
I think it's a little bit of Memphis discovering or, kind of reclaiming who they are. This is what they do, which I think was a quote from somebody. I think Blake said it. This is what they do. They're physical. They get up in you. They defend the passing lane. They crash the offensive boards. And I think they were a more physical team than the Clippers. I've always said I don't think this was sort of the sexy series for a lot of people. Like, I'm really looking forward to Clippers Memphis, Charles Barkley and many others. This aesthetically is not going to be a pleasing series, despite what happened at the end of Game 1, which was miraculous. And we spoke about it at length. But I think this is just going to be trench warfare. And Memphis essentially got the best of the Clippers. I think there are two matchups in this series that are decidedly tilted in favor of one individual. I think Rudy Gay versus whoever is going to defend Rudy Gay, and Blake Griffin versus whoever is going to defend Blake Griffin. And one of those matchups is living up to billing, and that's Rudy Gay. Blake has been reticent. There's a certain caution to his game, and I'm not sure what it is. But Memphis hasn't really sent double teams. They've got people around. They've got people helping when he turns middle. But that, to me, right now, is sort of Rudy Gay versus his defender, and Blake Griffin versus the dudes that are defending him. And right now, I think that was the difference in Game 2. Rudy had a phenomenal game, and the Clippers shot the ball well. Got a lot of what they wanted, but they're still having trouble defensively, and we've talked about it at length. I don't know that the problems weren't so much the classical Clipper issues, but I do think that some of them were born out of the turnovers and born out of just giving. What at the front court of Memphis alone had 11 I think offensive boards, but I do think it was sort of. It's still a defensive challenge for this team.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And my direction here says I should follow with being at the game. I don't really know how to follow with that. People were loud. Some people were drunk. It was an experience in terms of being around fans like that. People living and dying. Late in the game, Rudy Gay had a turnover, and everyone around me was, Rudy, and I was like, there's the one mistake that the guy made, and it was still I think a 7 or 8 point game at that point. And it was, it was just like any place where the fans are very passionate. You could definitely see the physicality returning to that, not only wrestling under the basket, but on the perimeter, seeing Chris Paul be, I think corralled maybe. Obviously he wasn't limited in terms of his own scoring, but there were some turnovers, and the speed and the ability to recover to open shooters in the corner. I think the tone in some ways was set with, to me at least, with Bobby Simmons had a three-pointer blocked, and it forced a shot clock violation. That was sort of the story of the night in terms of Chris Paul trying to operate on that side pick and roll area, I think, at least in terms of his distribution. Anybody else have something?
Well, I guess I'm supposed to follow up, going on down the order. I guess I know how good Tony Allen is on defense, but I was still expecting Chris Paul to handle the ball a little bit better than he did in the last game, and I think he will handle it better, especially coming home. 5 turnovers is just kind of a lot for him. I did think that there were still some really positive signs, like Kevin mentions that he shot the ball well. And there were a couple times like where Nick Young was like, made a three in the corner. I'm like, okay, they're coming on back. So I do really like the dynamic that Nick Young gives them. As much as it was a fluke, it also exposed what the Clippers do have as a new viable option, because they haven't been a good corner 3-point or as good a corner 3-point shooting team before Nick Young, and I think they'll do well coming up in the next game.
Kevin, I want to ask you a question. In Game 2, it felt like the Clippers were really able to take away Marc Gasol at the high post, and there was a big focus on both DeAndre and Blake kind of sticking with him at the high post. What's the big adjustment going into Game 3 for the Clippers?
It's interesting. I think they started fronting.
Okay.
They started fronting 1 through 4 again, and a little bit like a 3/4 front on Gasol, which was essentially how they were playing at the very beginning of the season. And by the way, I think something that contributed to the offensive rebounding issue for Memphis. I mean, when you front a guy, and I thought they did it well. I thought the ball denial to Gasol, I thought the Clippers put a real focus, I think, on those spots in the middle of the floor where Gasol flashes. I think they were very intent on taking away the pass from Conley to Gasol. But I do think, not unlike the first couple weeks of the season when they were having trouble on the defensive glass, sort of by staying on the high side of these guys, they lost position. It wasn't just, they got out hustled. I mean, I think to some extent, rebounding is often a reflection of just of base defense and guys taken out of position when centers have to sort of move out to help on a guy like Rudy Gay. Beneath the rim, that's a space kind of left open and up for grabs, which is how a team like Memphis basically manages to collect the majority of its misses for the better part of 3/4, as the Grizzlies did. But so I'm kind of at a loss. I wish I sort of had a prescription. I mean, again, they had a good offensive night, even with all the turnovers. I mean, this is a team that I think ended up scoring 109, 110 points, per 100 possessions. I mean, it was a very slow game. Everyone's like, they have to raise the tempo. I disagree. I don't think the Clippers need to play faster. I don't think there's any evidence that a faster style of play favors the Clippers, and if anything, if there are a lot more possessions in Saturday's game, then I think it probably reflects poorly. I think it's probably because the turnover rate continues to be high. I think they may want to look at that. They may want to look at whether or not it pays to front, because again, the peripherals are what really controlled this game. I don't know that the base defense was awful. I think Rudy was able to get really loose. I don't know that the Clippers have anybody who can really do anything about that. I think they might have to operate on a Rudy gets his, and shut everybody else out. But I'm kind of an Occam's razor guy on this. I don't have any great X's and O theory as to what the Clippers can do. I do think the difference were the extra opportunities generated by turnovers and offensive rebounds. I think the base defense was reasonably decent, particularly given the limitations. So, they may need to look at where they position defenders in the half court so that they don't get killed on the glass. And obviously, they have to protect the ball a little bit. And I wish I had something far more intricate and sophisticated and nuanced. But I just think, I really think this is, sometimes playoff series are these beautiful chess matches. I think right now it's checkers.
Yeah, I agree with that. I thought there was, I said so in the ledger, that it was really just the extra possessions that Memphis won. And Andrew asked me on ClipperBlog Live how you fix that. I don't know. But one place where I do disagree with you is that I think the Clippers do need to get out and run more. If for nothing else, then it lets Blake get quick post entries, get him out in transition, maybe with the ball, filling the lanes. I just think they need to find a way to somehow get him going, and with the way he's playing in the half court and, passing up chances and not being able to score over Gasol or Randolph, I don't know. I think they have to get him going somehow. So I feel that a high tempo offense kind of fixes that. I don't know. What do you say to that?
I mean, they this is a team in Memphis that just plays transition extremely well. I mean, it's just and it's interesting because generally speaking, I think teams that hit the offensive glass hard leave themselves vulnerable to transition because guys aren't back, and it's funny, they're not a this is not a team that's really gifted with fast fast bigs who can really get back, but they are the number 3 transition defensive team in the league, and I just don't know how you precipitate a running game other than, okay, well, now you need to you need to generate turnovers, and that's great. I mean, but I think that barring that, there's no real. I just don't think the opportunities are going to be there. I mean, everybody wants to run. Chris Paul does not want to run. Chris Paul, if anything, I think comes out of Wednesday night thinking, how do I re-exert control over this game? I did not have the kind of control I wanted, in the half court. They were up in me. They were letting them play. I mean, it's unusual to hear Chris allude to officiating. As much as he bitches during the course of a game, you never hear him in post-game comments say, well, they let us play, and he alluded to the fact that they kind of manhandle him, which is really unusual. In some ways, it's an expression of exasperation on his point. But I mean, they did manhandle him, and I think you're going to see Chris Paul come out and just absolutely try to re-exert the kind of control. He had 29 points, but that's not control. I mean, that's just, if anything, I think that's sort of that's a I think it's a call for help, and I think they're just going to play. I think it's going to be a grind fest again. I'm looking at 88 possessions as kind of not my over under, but I mean I think there's no way to run, not with Chris, not without generating turnovers, not with that Memphis transition D. It's a tough one.
Kevin, I have a question for you talking about the transition defense, because you look at Memphis and they're so good on the perimeter, and how much of that is in effect on their defense, like compared to having like Zebo and Gasol getting back. Like if you have Blake and DeAndre running the court, like that seems like an opportunity, even though Memphis is traditionally really good on the perimeter.
Yeah, I mean, Memphis has been, and they've said as much. I mean, they've been really intent on watching Blake on these leak outs. They feel like, if you take away the 8 points he gets on those buckets, that ultimately he's not a problem. And they're just really intent. I mean, part of it is also the perimeter defense. I mean, the Clippers can't get a side pick and roll to save their lives right now. Memphis pushes everything. I mean, I think they defend that, other than Boston and maybe Chicago. I think they defend that side pick and roll as well as any team in the league. It's insane. And it's great having, listen, you got Tony Allen, you got Mike Conley, you're in business. You don't have to trap as much because those guys get over everything. Allen hasn't been playing the ball, but, and even Gasol, I think Marc Gasol is an insanely underrated defender. I think there's this assumption he's a big old Euro, and his brother's soft, and I'll tell you, he's not Kevin Garnett, but man, he's not a big you want to deal with in the pick and roll. He's just tough. The Clippers, it's weird, dude. I mean, the Clippers, they played 15% of their playbook. I mean, it was. Someone told me that at one point, Vinny kind of called out to Chris, "What are we running?" And I don't think it was rhetorical. And I don't think that reflects anything on Vinny. I mean, I think that's, Chris. Chris is running the show out there. But I don't know how you generate transition. It's one of those. I mean, this is like this moves into a philosophical, almost holistic debate. It's like, how do you run more? It's tough. I just don't think it's Chris's instincts, and it's certainly not Vinny's instincts. And Blake would love to get some of those. But man, Memphis is back. I just think they're going to have to win this game in the trenches, or win this series.
Yeah. In terms of transition, I guess I would say, I can't expect the team to just magically create transition. Obviously, it would help Blake immensely if they could, but maybe not so much transition opportunities, but pick up the pace in the half court even in terms of initiating offense, getting him some catches when maybe they're 10 seconds left on the shot clock instead of 5 seconds left on the shot clock. It's not easy because the Grizzlies deny everything. They play very solidly. But if there was a way to almost pick up the half court pace, I think it would benefit the team greatly. And at the same time, the offense has still been extremely successful, 109 points per 100 possessions.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's
It's very
the interesting
complicated.
thing. I mean, that really is because, I mean, I remember, even Lionel Hollins at practice today, kind of reminded everybody that the Clippers shot the ball extremely well, and it wasn't just they hit from the outside. They were okay from the outside, but and I'm with you too. I think, man, you want to get Blake going. Like, how about some early drag screens? Like how about just the minute you cross half court, let Blake do one of those slips. Now, Zebo's running all over the place. That guy's just not, we know he's one of the slowest footed guys in the league, but you settle into a half court. I mean, this is where I'm with DJ. I don't even think it's transition. I think it's early offense. I think it's, don't let every second that ticks by in that shot clock is a second that, Zebo can start WrestleMania with Blake. But every time you come down and run a quick drag screen and slip, and like Marcus Gasol has to rotate over, and now who's got on DeAndre and he's ducking in, or now you can kind of pick the picker with Kenyon if he's the guy out there, and now you got the merry-go-round going. And I'm with Nick on this. I mean, I think it's a lot of it's early offense. I think it's just every moment you settle in. And not about running out, but every moment you settle in is a moment that you just feed Memphis with their strengths and just let them wrestle you.
You know what would help Blake the most, in my mind? Set a decent screen for once in your life.
Yeah.
Actually get a hold of Tony Allen or Mike Conley so the defense, every pick and roll with him and Chris Paul is like a waffle back and forth. Do I slip this or do I just stand here? I have not seen Blake Griffin pancake anyone on a screen yet this season.
He is not confident in this role, and it's bizarre because that's not a brick wall you want to run into.
Yeah.
I mean, that dude is not. I mean, he is Perkinsian if he wanted to be, right? I mean, he's massive and broad, and I'm with you. I don't know if that's player development. I don't know if he was never asked to do it in Oklahoma. But, we always bemoan why don't they run more screen roll stuff with Blake? And part of it is, he doesn't really initiate a lot of space as a screener. He just doesn't. I mean, part of it is man, it's hard to screen for Chris Paul. As intuitive as it should be, man, you don't know where that dude's going. You're the screener. I mean, you just... David West, obviously. By the way, like, if this year has done anything, it's just, like, give a big old hand to David West, man. He's a good ball player. And
sometimes I think Chris Paul doesn't know where he's going. He crossed over Mike Conley and then crossed over back so Mike Conley could cover him. It was like his first move was too good.
What was that? Was that Beckley Mason's tweet that, like, Conley was in position?
That's the one.
Because Paul basically crossed him over twice, and by virtue of just being deked in consecutive, instantaneously, he actually landed back where he should have been. It's funny, man. Chris is such a unique player. Again, it's just like everyone. They love to get out in transition. You hear analysts say it all the time, and it's like, no. He's just, and he's got that Nash thing where he controls his dribble. Like, yes, but it's a completely different style and brand of basketball. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I think we're still learning stuff about Chris, and I think for Blake, a lot of it is just figuring out, just intuitively, okay, how does Chris's movement, how do I leverage that to get my own space? And he hasn't figured that out yet, and I mean, he will, but it's early and it's been a weird season.
Indeed. I'll try to let Andrew figure out a way to segue out of this, but I was just going to say it is amazing how important the screen game can be, especially, we mentioned the perimeter defense, the wrestling inside, but some of the screens Marc Gasol has set on the perimeter have been pretty vicious in this series, and not in a dirty way, but just very effective screens, really hurting the Clippers, who cannot get over screens to save their life in a lot of situations, from my point of view, which is you could say part of that is hurting the defense. Mike Conley, Rudy Gay, all these guys drawing fouls, not necessarily always off of screen and roll action or screen action, but it's pretty rough on the inside there.
Kevin, when you go to the series page on ESPN.com, you're in the minority of your peers about picking the Clippers to win this series. You've seen the first 2 games now. Do you want to change your opinion about that at all, or do you feel comfortable with Clippers in 6?
I mean, I don't feel comfortable. I still think they got the best player on the floor. Man, it's so hard to. I feel like this is the one series where it's so hard to get away from just the cliched tropes of basketball, like, oh, they got the best player on the floor. So, I still think Memphis can be easy to defend. The Clippers. Chris was so uncharacteristically careless on Wednesday night in Game 2, and I just don't see that happening again. I mean, the Karan injury does leave you with pause, and I know there are reports out today that he might play, or he wants to play. I'll believe it when I see it. It becomes a difficult proposition, and no disrespect to Bobby Simmons, who I thought acquitted himself well, but now you got that guy, playing 20 minutes a night. You need him. I'm not going to walk back on the prediction. I still think the Clippers are fundamentally. I think they might still have, the 2 best players on the floor. As much as I love Gasol and Rudy Gay, who again I actually think was, aside from the offensive rebounds and turnovers, I thought in the half-court game Rudy Gay was just phenomenal, and I think it was a huge. I tried to construct my story Wednesday night around him because I just he sort of had this afterthought, beautifully efficient game. And pick the Clippers apart. But I'll stick with the Clippers. I do think, I think Memphis has numbers 3 through 9, but I do think, the top 2 players on the floor are still, Chris and Blake. And, if they can get that, that Spawn insane and, just get a Randy Foye game and a Mo game and get, they'll have another Chris bailout game. And I think they can get to 4. I really do. And look, they got the home court advantage. I mean, this is a 5-game series, and games 1, 2, and 4 are going to be in Los Angeles. And I don't think that's nothing. I think that's a huge, huge deal. So we'll see.
Let me just say that I love the amount of appreciation going on in these playoffs for so many different players. Gay, we're talking about looking at learning about Chris Paul. It's such a time for appreciation of basketball, everyone. Let's have a round of applause for basketball.
We're not having a round of applause.
Yeah. I'm giving a round of applause.
Do it, Breen.
All right,
I
Kevin.
like. Let him. All right. No. Go ahead. I was just gonna say I like that Nick Young is 6th in David Thorpe's playoff MVP race right now, which just kind of sums up this series so perfectly.
Kevin, with the Beastie Boys news today, people want to know if you have a favorite Beastie Boys song. Let's end you on that one.
I think Root Down. Let me give my own power rankings too. Beastie Boys. Root Down, there's this great free zone mix of Root Down, which is my favorite. I think, the opening beats of Brass Monkey are phenomenal. I'll go Groove Holmes, number 3. Totally underrated track. So What You Want, I'll Check Your Head, I think would be number 4. 5, probably Brass Monkey. Again, I kind of like the minimalist Beastie Boys. Man, you get like a friggin' trumpet in that song. You get a freaking trumpet in that song.
You would.
What?
Can we just get a little bit of love for Sabotage, which
Yeah, you know what? Go throw that.
But
Sabotage has the best.
I was growing up in a time where I'm hanging out in the middle of the summer and I'm watching way too much MTV. And that music video comes on, and they have the ridiculous fake mustaches, and it's just like you hear those beats, and you're just like, it was I don't know. I don't remember how old I was, but that definitely captured an entire.
Well, and, and that was the thing too, because like that video, that was like before the Starchy, Starsky and Hutch kind of revival, and like let's do kind of funkadelic '70s stuff and Boogie Nights, and that was, you know what I'm saying? Like that was a cool video aesthetically too. There's so many good tracks. I mean, and like like Paul Revere's a good track, and I mean there's just a lot of good stuff. I mean, what am I missing?
I like No Sleep Till Brooklyn.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a classic for me. I'm more of a classic. I like the hits of the Beastie Boys. I never really dove too much into their other stuff.
I like
Yeah,
how
now I
Kevin
will.
knows so much here. I
Now
mean,
I have a
felt
power
like,
rankings list.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, no, because here's the thing. Like I mean, I'm the Venn diagram here, right? Because like I'm over 35. B, I'm a Jew, and so you
Nailed it.
I mean, I think there's definitely there's some. This is why you know nothing, because you're like 14. I mean, were you even born when License to Ill came out?
Nope.
All right,
that
there
would
we
be
go.
like 2
I mean,
or 3
how many?
years
Show of hands. Who was born when that album came out? I mean, Breen was.
I'm pretty sure I was, right?
I don't think you were, man.
And Andrew was for sure.
I was.
Um,
Barely.
What was that? I mean, that was '86.
Oh yeah, that's when I was born. So
I mean, am I right there? What are we doing? It's '86, I think.
This is terrible.
Yeah.
All right, so you're like, I mean, you're a March baby, right?
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I think it came out that summer, so you were like,
One could say that they made the album for my birth.
yes, commemorating the birth of Daniel J. Foster,
That's right.
gentleman licensed to ill.
That's
But
right.
yeah, this is anyway. So that's my read. What was the question? Like, how do I think of give me your read on the
I
Beastie
think you
Boys?
nailed it. Whatever it was, you nailed it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go.
All viewers need to know is Kevin Arnovitz, over 35 and Jewish.
Gentlemen, I do have to run. I lost track of the clock there.
Too much fun.
I'm trying to. I was coming up with a basketball metaphor. I mean, man, honestly, like I'm like the Clippers on those last 3-quarter possessions. I've lost track of the clock. So anyway, a pleasure as always.
Kevin, thanks for your time.
Adios, Kevin.
That guy's the best.
It was an intense closing right there. Yeah, Licensed to Ill, November 15th, 1986.
Oh,
A true classic.
Just an announcement to nobody that's viewing this live right now, because apparently our live stream is broken.
what? Ah.
So
Also NBA playoffs. So
also NBA
there's
playoffs.
that.
When everyone's watching this on our YouTube archive, apologies for that. We'll see about getting that fixed for the next broadcast.
Did it work the last time at least?
It's worked every time. This is actually the first time that, for whatever reason, it's just not broadcasting, and we're getting tweets and comments about that. And
We had so much topical Beastie Boys action.
We're all going to go down with hand injuries before this ClipperBlog Live is over.
So before we started this broadcast, Nick and I were talking about possibly not running conventional lineups anymore, because Rudy Gay just seemed so good at eviscerating the standard Bobby Simmons, Nick Young small forward lineup that the Clippers had trotted out. And I'm a big advocate for just running that jumbo package the whole time. Run a zone,
Mbako.
run the Jumbaco package, and only put Nick Young at the 3. Run that 3-guard lineup for the 12 minutes that Rudy Gay isn't in there, and let them try and score points that way. But if Rudy Gay's in the lineup, then you need to have some size in there to keep those wings off the boards. DJ, what do you think about that?
I've got some serious sun coming into my face that I'm going to need to take care of in a bit. But I think, yes, I'm good with Kenyon Martin in small doses in certain situations. I don't know. I feel like the spreading of the floor is still ultra important. And
why do you think the spreading on the floor is important? I mean, Mo Williams, Randy Foye, they haven't really done anything the entire series. And then in terms of trying to get out in transition, we only had 3 fast break points the last game. We're not getting anything out of these things that you want, so might as well go the other direction, right?
I get it, and that's a good point to make. But in
That's
actual
that's great. We're just gonna
practice,
stop right there and go.
Oh, no,
Uh,
take it, DJ.
I mean, in practice, no, it doesn't work because at least Mo and Foy give the presence that if they're
Yeah.
open, they can hit a three.
It's like that. People
Rudy
have
Gay could
talked to
just
me.
sit in the paint. And
Exactly.
it would just be, and they could double Blake like going 2 feet over and
Yeah.
they're double teaming because
And we will get to
just-
Breen right here, but
just doesn't
people have that in theory that sounds good, but there's people talk to me about Kenyon Martin, who I was not big on early in the season. I didn't realize the defensive impact he was going to have. But also, if you look at your on-off court numbers, where you have certain guys who maybe do not have great rebounding numbers, but the team improves because they're boxing out, but not necessarily grabbing rebounds. That's offensively, that's like your Mo Williams, Nick Young lineup for the Clippers. Even if they're not hitting shots, the Grizzlies are having to scramble to make sure those guys aren't just left open. Although there is something to be said for Jumbako package. Green.
small doses, very small doses.
For whatever reason, I think back to the trouble that the Clippers have had guarding Kevin Durant, and especially last year, when it was like, who's going to guard him? And there was this like strange combo package of Randy Foy and Ryan Gomes on Durant that there was like wild success. So why can't we just pray for magic?
I give a lot of credit to Russell Westbrook in that situation, I think, because almost all of those Clippers wins, he was so terrible. It felt like, Kevin Durant maybe was just getting frozen out in classic Westbrook fashion.
But Durant didn't play well in any of those games either.
That's true.
Or
all but like one of them at least, yeah.
Yeah. So I also think like sometimes like Rudy Gay just gets hot. 9 for 13. That's probably not gonna happen all the time. I think Bobby Simmons will do a little bit better job, and I think Rudy Gay was like the identity of the team, like trying to like jump back in. Like you could see in his actions that he was just like we lost that last game, but that is in the past, and like he put his stamp on it. And I think sometimes like it was as much like an emotional domination as it was, just like a physical on-court domination.
That was beautiful. Yeah, and Charlie made the point, I think, on the last ClipperBlog Live that, Rudy Gay, every shot he took almost, except for maybe, I don't know, one fast break attempt, something like that. Every shot was pretty well challenged. Was he incredibly effective with, either Nick Young or Bobby Simmons on him? More or less. He had some turnover issues. He isn't like a LeBron-type dominator, no matter how bad the matchup is. He still had, 5 turnovers in that game. Mm-hmm. His points per play were pretty solid, but usually, as you said, those contested 10, 14-footers, they're, if you see him miss maybe 3 out of every 6, I think he shot 70% from mid-range in that game. That's not going to happen again when he's so contested, and he'll be inefficient enough for the Clippers to live with that isolation. So I'm as dominant as Rudy Gay appeared, I think that we can worry more about the transition in terms of the turnovers on one end, leading to easy points for them down the stretch, and worry about the offensive rebounding more than Rudy Gay.
I think we need to change the logo of ClipperBlog from dissecting the side screen role since 2006 to complaining about shooting guards playing small forward since 2006. Are we ever going to get out of this? Like, we're going to be talking about glue guys this summer again, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. And it's... but have you seen how poorly like Battier has played this year, and like the guys that we were looking at? Like, it's not like anybody like played well. And
no.
I was the first one to complain about the Caron Butler signing, and not because of Caron's bad, but like the amount of money for the amount of years I thought was, and I still believe, was more than he was worth. That said, he actually played like real person basketball, and instead of this like sort of crappy amalgam of like hoisted shots and like bad defense, and I don't know. Like at least he played well, so it's just like this reminder that like, oh yeah, like the Clippers.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
didn't nosedive directly into the ground. He was not.
Right.
He did not Shane Battier or Tayshaun Princess or anything.
No.
He was a responsible adult, and for
Yeah.
that we should thank Karan Butler.
I'm really curious to see how Karan will play next year, especially after he gave that interview tidbit saying he was making the veterans were managing their energy in this crazy regular season. So Karan Butler, just go to Germany and get that crazy Kobe treatment. Come on back. We'll be happy to see you next year.
Yeah.
Um, Last question about the series. I asked Kevin the same thing. It seems like the Grizzlies have basically won 7 out of the 8 quarters of those first 2 games. Do you guys feel any more comfortable or less comfortable about the Clippers' chance to win this series? Green, you want to start us off?
I would say I feel just a little bit more comfortable because I like being able to watch the Clippers come in and grind no matter what. Like even in that second game, they were still coming back. The first game, they had the miraculous comeback, and I think that was something I wanted to see. And I also like that they could actually somewhat contain Marc Gasol a little bit because like Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph, I mean, I was feeling like they were just going to come in and just absolutely annihilate the Clippers, and I was less optimistic than Kevin was in his sort of prediction of the series, just because those guys are so good. And now that I could see that they can actually defend them a little bit and slow them down a little bit, I'm definitely hopeful going into this weekend now that they come back to LA. And the other thing that's sort of sneaky is there's not like I don't feel like Memphis fans will travel as well as like if they played, like a Phoenix Suns team or a team that's closer that is going to be able to come over and affect the the fan
The
support.
morale, yes.
Not a lot of transplant Grizzly fans. Yeah, that's true.
Is that all you got? Yeah, I was kind of surprised at the number of Clippers fans in terms. I was kind of thinking people would be jumping on the bandwagon now that they're sort of exciting and everything. But I was one of maybe, I don't know, I wouldn't say there were even 300 or 400. We'll come back, DJ. It's okay. But
I'm just giving it to everyone in the chat box, and now it's my turn. And now I lost my turn.
Yeah, in terms of Gasol, Reggie, I mean, I'm very surprised because obviously he's a guy that can operate in space and he can finish pretty decently around the rim. His rebounding has dropped off over the course of the season. He was having a career year rebounding there. But then, we saw Zach Randolph hit the boards on the other side, which is something he can do, even if his legs aren't quite under him and if that mid-range jumper isn't falling. So one thing I would be worried about coming up in this next game is not so much the turnovers. I think we can get to some point the team can get those under control. Not so much the offensive rebounds. There's adjustments made to where the Grizzlies aren't totally dominant there. But I would worry about the return of Marc Gasol. If they really focus on, telling him, well, what can he do when Reggie Evans has got 2 arms in my back and pushing me out? What can we do when Blake gets switched when, DJ is out there, Kenyon is on him, and see if they focus on attacking those guys, trying to get fouls on them more with Gasol and trying to get him also distributing again more. He was just, outside of setting screens, he was pretty invisible for the last 3 or so quarters of the last game. I don't think we can expect that over the course of the series.
Yeah, Green had said that he feels a little more comfortable after these first 2 games. I feel a lot more comfortable, mostly because the Grizzlies basically looked as good as not they haven't hit their ceiling, but they look pretty good. They look pretty good in game 1, doing it from the 3-point line. In game 2, they rebounded the crap out of the ball and basically punched the Clippers in the gut and just stole their lunch money. And the Clippers still had an opportunity to win that game. Chris Paul misses on 3 end of quarter possessions. How often does that happen? So many uncharacteristic turnovers. And even if the Grizzlies win the rebounding battle, it's not going to be as huge as it was in Game 2. The free throw disparity, all of that. Like, you can still give the Grizzlies the victories in all of those team battles. And if the Clippers just played 5%, 10% better in those areas, they probably win Game 2 as well. And everyone's talking about, oh, the Clippers, where did they come out of? We thought they were this run and gun Lob City team, and all of a sudden they just took it to the Grizzlies, stole 2 games out of Memphis. Memphis hearts are broken. So I feel a lot more comfortable, especially since we're not seeing any kind of consistent production out of the role players, and they always tend to play better at home. That's my opinion on it. DJ shaking their head.
Man, that was so positive and wonderful. But you're still not buying the Grizzlies. I don't know what to do with you.
I give them a lot of respect. I think they'll beat literally every other team in the Western Conference. It's like MMA. The Clippers are just a bad style matchup for the Grizzlies, in my opinion.
Okay, fair enough. Let's do this, though, okay? And I'm going to ask you guys to answer Clippers or Grizzlies. Who has the better individual matchups in this series?
You're going to have to throw it to somebody, I think.
No, all at the same time. I don't care how.
I think that's a draw, isn't it?
I can kind of get with that. It's so hard. I mean, Chris Paul is such a big plus.
Shut up.
You know?
All of you, shut up. Who plays the better defense?
Well, that's
The Grizzlies.
Okay.
But who plays the better offense?
Who's been better on the boards? No,
Wayne.
shut up! Shut up! I'm pointing my lint roller at you as it's a gun. I'm never getting you guys involved in a point I'm making again, okay? Grizzlies have better individual mismatches. No one can cover Rudy Gay. They're the better
Blake or Chris Paul, though.
They're the better defensive team. They're covering Blake just fine right now. I hate to be Mr. Negative, okay? I didn't want to be that guy, but I got to do it.
Yeah, you did.
All the
DJ, just come on over. It's so
I
warm
can't.
here.
The Grizzlies are a better basketball team right now, but they don't have Chris Paul. I think Chris Paul has to play perfect for the Clippers to win this series. We've seen him do it before. I think he'll do it again. That's why I'm still saying Clippers in 7. But Andrew, gosh darn you, I want you to at least acknowledge that the Grizzlies are tough, and can easily win this series if Chris Paul isn't on his best game.
I definitely think the Grizzlies can win this series. I actually think if it goes to 7, the Grizzlies will probably win it because it's at Memphis. So I like the Clippers in 6 idea more than Clippers in 7.
Hey, Clippers in 5 guy now says Clippers in 6.
Well, I said 5 when I thought that the Clippers were going to have home court.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You did change it. Okay.
Right.
All right. Go ahead, Nick. Now that I'm done.
I'm not number one. I really feel like we
Harassing
probably
girls.
give a little bit too much credit to home court advantage. Maybe I'm crazy, but I don't know. We can still. There was so much theoretical action in Andrew's breakdown of why the Clippers are going to win, but at the same time, it's theoretical at this point. You never know what's going to happen. Look at Game 1. That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
You can't hear me, right? I'm not a robot right now, am I?
No, you're fine.
Okay, just making sure. But
Sometimes you're a robot.
but I mean, I don't know. For 2 games in a row, we have seen some turnover issues for the Clippers, so that's starting to worry me. They're containing Chris Paul, and that really, you can look at it where DJ, your individual matchup thing, and what is the main response to that? Well, the best player in the series is on the Clippers side. That's great, but I guess the thing is the Grizzlies don't have to lean on one individual player. They have 2 or 3 guys every night who can make a certain kind of impact, either defensively. Rudy Gay and Marc Gasol can make a defensive difference if they're not having a great night. You have, I don't know, more defined roles almost, and more an ability to vary those roles from the Grizzlies in some ways. Whereas the Clippers, you have one man who's going to direct the offense, and then you have, well, what's going to happen with the bench? Who knows? And, is Nick Young going to make shots? Is Mo Williams going to make shots? But I guess it's so hard. It's so hard for me to make a prediction because I'm trying to do that now. I never said if I felt better about the Clippers or worse. I think I feel a little bit worse about the Clippers. I did not realize that the Grizzlies could continue to kind of force turnovers against the Clippers better than they have so far in the regular season matchups. That worries me a little bit.
My final point before, and I won't yell this time. I'm sorry. I got a little out of hand. The way Blake Griffin is playing basketball right now, both offensively and defensively, and considering the injury to Karan, the way Blake Griffin is playing right now, Chris Paul has to be perfect. Has to be pretty much perfect for the Clippers to win this series, in my mind. That's it.
I think you're going to see a different Blake Griffin coming home. Those are his first 2 playoff games on the road in a tough crowd against 2 really big physical guys. And I think you're going to see a really, really different Blake Griffin these next 2 games. I don't know if it's going to be enough to win both of them, but I think we're going to walk into a really good performance from Blake. One of either game 3 or 4. My gut says game 4, just because I feel like Clippers haven't. Like a 1:30 game on a Saturday isn't like the kind of game you build up for. But I think he's going to play a lot better.
Yeah, I do. I like that perspective because this is the time you've had two days off now between games, or it's going to end up being played on the 3rd day. So there's some time for both coaching staffs to kind of talk. Let's see what adjustments we get on that side pick and roll with Blake and Chris, where Blake has not been getting great space, and then see what adjustments happen in terms of that spacing when there are 5 guys in the paint on Blake, because the Clippers do have some matchup advantages that we haven't seen so far in terms of, Zach Randolph not being at full strength, not scoring all that well outside of offensive rebounds. So there's some fixable things for the Clippers, and then we'll see what the Grizzlies do to counteract those things. And I'm very, very interested. This is, as ugly as this series is probably going to end up being, turnovers, whatever. Pretty fun stuff.
Cautious optimism from the ClipperBlog staff. So, for Rookie, DJ Foster, Nick Flint, I'm Andrew Hahn. Thanks for tuning in.